As a powerlifter, should you be training your bench press with a touch and go? Should you be training your bench press with a competition pause? Should you be training your bench press with a extended pause? Or maybe combining all of these? Well, in this video, we're going to break down the pros and cons of each of these variations so you can figure out which ones you should be implementing in your training in order to be successful in the sport of powerlifting. So this is a question that comes up often. I see it a lot of times on Reddit, especially with maybe more beginner, intermediate lifters, or even coaches trying to figure out, well, should I be doing touch and go? Should I be doing competition pause? Should I be varying it based on where I am in the training cycle? Should I be, doing one more than the other as far as the number of training days? If you're doing more frequency, as far as like 3 or 4 times frequency on the bench press. And so let's break it down first as far as how I define it. So the way I define a touch and go bench press is you're either doing a light touch on the chest and then pressing, or you're doing even a little bit of a bounce. So whether you're using a little bit of momentum or a lot of momentum, you're not doing a standard competition pause where the bar is motionless on the chest. You're doing a little bit of a touch or bounce in order to make that bottom portion easier and use a little bit of stretch reflex to help you get the weight up. So this is gonna let you do a little bit more weight, and it's gonna be a little bit easier as far as that bottom position not being as stressful on the joints and the muscles holding that bottom position. So it's going to feel a little bit more comfortable for people that can use a little bit of momentum, a little bit more stretch reflex, and do more weight. Especially when doing high rep work, it can often feel easier overall for all the reps to be able to do like a touch and go for sets of 8 or 10 rather than doing a long pause for sets of 8 or 10. It really starts to fatigue you. All right, and then a pause bench press or a competition bench press is going to be equivalent to what you're going to get in a powerlifting meet. So it's going to be that standard where you're pausing on the chest, bars motionless, depending on the athlete and how fast they can stop it. It may feel like around like a 1 second count pause on the chest, and then from that dead stop, you're going to press it. So this is going to take a little bit of the stretch reflex away, not all of it, because your body can still maintain some of that stretch reflex, but you're going to be at a dead stop. And from that dead stop, with a little bit of stretch reflex gone, you're going to have to press. So that's going to make that bottom portion more difficult. And that's why a lot of people will then fail in that bottom, let's say 1/3 or 1/4 of a lift, because they have to come to that dead stop and press from that dead stop. Especially if you use a wider and wider grip, then that wider grip is naturally going to make that bottom position more difficult as well. And that's going to then change that strength curve where that bottom position is much more difficult. So you're not going to be able to do as much weight. So you're going to have to do less weight on a competition bench press compared to touch and go. And like I said as well, if you're doing a high rep work, then it can maybe feel more stressful or fatiguing throughout the set if you're doing, 6, 7, 8 reps. And then you can even take that further and do extended pauses where you're doing, let's say 2 times longer than a competition bench, 3 times longer than a competition bench, maybe even 5 times longer. And so now you're really trying to take more and more of that stretch reflex away, or trying to take even all of it away. And then again, pressing for that dead stop. So again, that's going to be more and more fatiguing, especially if you're the type of athlete who keeps it really tight on the chest and not sink it, versus if you're an athlete who sinks it and kind of relaxes, then you're going to be able to get away with the longer pause. But if you're doing a light touch and really holding it and trying to squeeze everything tight for a 3 count or 5 count, it's really going to get fatiguing for those higher rep sets. So when it comes to which one you should use, it's going to depend on your goals and where you are in the training cycle. So in general, the closer you are to a competition, the more specific you want to be. So you want to be doing less and less touch and go bench or other variations, and more competition bench. So you're very specific to what you're doing, which is the sport of powerlifting. So you're really honing in your technique and figuring out your pause so that you're prepared for a competition when it comes to that pause. The further out you are from a competition, the more you can try different variations depending on whether you're trying to focus on building a specific muscle, if you're trying to build a specific range of motion, if you're trying to put on more muscle mass, those kind of things, then you can use variations to help you out. So for example, if you're trying to build up some more muscle mass in your pecs and your delts and your triceps, and you're trying to do high rep work for multiple sets, then you may not want to do all of that as a competition bench press and really fatigue yourself. You may want to do touch and go bench press to be able to do a little bit more weight and do high reps a little bit more easily. And on the flip side, if you're someone who's trying to build up that bottom position, if you're trying to work on a technique bench press day or a power day or speed day or dynamic day, whatever you want to call it, and you're trying to build up that bottom position, maybe you're weak in that bottom position, maybe you're weak when it comes to getting the bar motionless fast so you can get a faster press command, then maybe doing the comp bench or even extended pause bench, then it's going to let you be able to work on that with lighter weights and be able to learn that technique, build some confidence in that position, build stability in that position, and be able to transfer that then when you go into the higher intensity work. So you want to figure out, what are your specific goals? where you are in the training cycle, and then for those specific session, okay, how are you going to implement specific exercises, sets, reps, and intensities in order to achieve the goal that you want to achieve throughout that training cycle. So with these variations or any other variations, they are not independent. You don't have to be like, oh, I can only do touch and go bench during this phase, and I can only do competition bench during this phase. You can implement them depending on what your frequency is, or even within a session, you can work up to a top set first on your competition bench and then do your back off volume, higher rep work, touch and go bench press. So for me personally, when I'm applying it to athletes, again, I'm using that approach. Farther out from the competition, we might use more variations. Closer to competition, we're going to be more specific. For athletes who are maybe more beginners and are trying to learn how to do a proper pause bench that they haven't done before because they're coming just from general strength training that they're not doing competition pauses, then I'm going to focus more on competition pauses, less on touch and go, because I want them to kind of get away from that touch and go mentality and switch over to that comp bench mentality. That's also where I may implement the long pause bench to really get them comfortable with that. If I have an athlete that's doing higher frequency and maybe they need more recovery between their hypertrophy touch and go day and their strength competition bench day, I may do a power extended pause day where we're doing a 2 count or 3 count pause with lower effort in order to help recover in time for the strength day. If I have someone who's maybe, slacking off even on their competition pause, maybe I'm giving them competition pause and they're jumping it and they're not pausing long enough compared to what I think is going to be in a competition, then what I might implement is doing a top set, a top single as a 2 count and 3 count, and really having them pause longer than they think they need to, because their 2 count may end up being like a 1 count competition pause and the 3 count may end up being like a 2 count. So we have to adjust and shift the name of the exercise to have them adjust to what it actually should be. So there's no magical exercise, and you don't have to just do one exercise. You can figure out, okay, what exercises are beneficial for what kind of goals? What kind of goals do you have as far as where you are in the training cycle? And then how can you implement those into the training week? So there may be times where you're doing touch and go bench, competition bench, and extended. There may be times where you're doing touch and go bench and competition bench. There may be times leading up to a meet where you're only doing competition bench. So it depends, and you have to figure out what works best for you. So if you found this video helpful, hit the thumbs up for 1 rep and help me out to get this video out to more people. And you can check out my bench press tips playlist that I have here on my channel to figure out what bench press video is next best for you to watch. And I'll catch you in that next video.